Corey here with another podcast. We're healing for yarning here at the settlement again in Gadigal country. Thanks to them and providing the space. I'll throw over to brother I got on today.
Thanks, Corey. My name's Darryl Gardiner. I'm a Wiradjuri man from southwestern New South Wales. Born and raised in a little place called Culcairn, or between Culcairn and Albury. And I've been living on Guigal land out in Kurnell for about the last 6 or 7 years, and love it out there because also it's about as close as the bush you can get, but still be in the city.
Yeah. So you and your family are the only blackfellas that live out there, or?
Well, it's funny because I did this course a couple of years ago, and you had to do a census on the. It was like a census, but it was like on the local. You had to do a census on a health promotion issue that impacted the local Aboriginal community.
Yeah.
And they said, you can't ask your own family questions.
Yeah.
And I said, well, at least I'm a pretty narrow set of numbers then. Out there, so I ended up broadening it. And they actually said, do across the bay and Lapperouse instead.
Okay,
so,
nice.
Yeah, it was fine. But yeah, mate, we got to meet each other through working together at Justice Health.
Yep.
So in terms of that, I've been working around, I guess, mental health, drug, alcohol, so probably more so mental health actually, and suicide prevention, and adolescent mental health for a long time, and was in a pretty lucky position a few years ago. Started my own business called Rolling with the Punches that initially was started, and I guess we'll probably talk about it more today, but was initially started to take mental health services to men that weren't going to access them through GP or mental health care plan or anything like that. But mate, probably over the past, definitely the last 2 years, 2.5 years, probably 99% of my work now is around domestic and family violence prevention from a lived experience perspective. Yeah.
So you're going back to growing up. Where'd you grow up?
Yes, I grew up with my mum for the first probably just me and mum for the first 2 years of my life, and I guess when I often want to go and talk about my story, a lot of my story unfortunately revolves around violence, and that was probably the first language that I ever learned. I learned violence as a language before I learned how to say mum or dad or drink or milk or whatever. But my mum was 15 when she had me, or she was 16 I should say. She was 15 when she was pregnant. I reflect on, I've got 4 kids now, and I reflect on when I shared the news of each of those pregnancies with family, and it's always happy.
Yeah.
Congratulations, that's great. When can we go wet the baby's head or whatever?
Yep.
And I think of how hard it must have been for my mum to share that news. So my mum was 15, like I said, when she found out she was pregnant. My dad was 19. They didn't have a relationship. They hooked up at a party, slept together. Mum got pregnant. My old man cleared out and was in and out a little bit, but they didn't have a relationship. But my mum had grown up with a father that she thought was her dad. And she didn't find out too much later in life that he wasn't her dad. But she was the oldest of 3 sisters. The fellow who she thought was her dad passed away when she was about 8. So she had 2 younger sisters, and then her mum, who was a nurse, started to abuse prescription medication really hard, became really unwell. So my mum had a dual responsibility to look after her little sisters and look after her mum. So she came home at 15, said she was pregnant, and unfortunately what she was met with was a response of, if you're pregnant, how will you look after me and your sisters? We don't, in a way of saying, don't want the competition of a baby. She became very jealous, my maternal grandmother, and called the neighbour over to, they held my mum down and kicked her repeatedly in the stomach, trying to make her miscarry.
Wow.
So yeah, it was pretty hectic introduction to life. But to answer your question, where did I grow up? So after that, while mum was still pregnant, we lived in a women's shelter I was born into that, and we lived there for about 2 years. And then grew up in Albury until the age of about 13. And then I went to live with my dad back out at Culcairn for about 4 years. And then I sort of shifted around a little bit since then, but whole childhood was in the Riverina.
Yep.
Yeah.
So that's home.
That's home, mate. Yeah.
Cold down there in the winter.
Freezing in the winter.
Yeah.
Hot in the summer too.
Yeah. That water's always cold though.
Water's cold. Doesn't matter.
Yeah.
But yeah, love getting back as much as I can, but never get back as much as I should.
Yeah.
Would want to, yeah.
So how was, I guess, school and stuff for you?
Yeah. School for me was a real struggle, mate. So and I'll probably give an introduction as to why. So the ages of 2 to 5, my mum was with another partner, really horrifically violent guy. He ended up going to jail for murder, and then my mum met my stepdad, who you probably think are like the trajectory of men. She'd been with my dad. My dad wasn't violent towards her; he just wasn't around.
Yep.
And then she met this other bloke who was horrifically violent to both of us, and then went off and did a whack for murder. And you think, oh, she's probably going to go down here, but what she did was she shot for the moon when she met my stepdad. He's he passed away 10 years this year, but he was just a really lovely guy, just a really beautiful fella. So was raised with him and mum. School was, I don't remember a whole lot about the early years. I was pretty bright man without pumping my own tyres up, but only for something I was interested in.
Yeah. If
it was something I wasn't interested in, I didn't care about it. And then that became pretty quickly, avoiding things, and I didn't want to do stuff. And probably around the age of 11 or 12, I stopped going to school for a while. Nobody really knew I was. Just took myself off to the PCYC every day and would hang about in there. I've sort of become pretty obsessed with boxing when I was a kid. And I just wanted to be around that all the time, basketball and stuff. And interesting thing now too is like when I was wagging to school and that, no one ever rang up and said, oh, maybe your son should come back to school. Or, did you know he hasn't been at school?
Yeah.
So no one even knew. If my mum was watching this podcast now, it's probably a surprise to me. But then high school probably become really hard for me, mate. I started using drugs in high school, which probably didn't help. But when I couldn't understand things or couldn't comprehend them, I'd avoid it. I'd become disruptive, not abusive.
Yeah.
Like I never surrounded teachers, things like that badly. because I lived with my dad, school was safer than being at home. So I hated school, but I didn't want to be at home. So I'd walk the line just enough to get punted from class.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't get suspended, but I worked from a desk in the hallway for most of my schooling career. Or I'd be walking around passing a footy to myself, whatever. So yeah, school was pretty tough for me, man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And how, what was the big difference going from living with mum to living with dad?
No boundaries. And funnily enough, now at 43, when I look back, the boundaries that I hated when I was living with my mum and stepdad, like, I can't go out past 5:30, or I'm not allowed down the street at night and things like that. When I went to live with my dad and there was no boundaries at all, I craved the other boundaries, and all my mates would be like, oh, you're mad at your house, your dad's never there, you do what you want. But it was funny because when I shared this story before, some people would say, why don't you just go back and live with your mum and stepdad? They're only 40 minutes down the road. What had happened when I was about 11, I was snooping around in my parents' room and I found a stack of paperwork that showed that so I should have told a bit of the other story first, but when mum met her partner when I was about 2 and got pregnant, the last time he sexually assaulted mum before he went to jail for murder, my mum became pregnant, so I had a little sister. And I'd found this paperwork in my parents' room that showed that my stepdad had legally adopted my little sister while her dad was in jail. He'd signed away all his parental rights. And because I hadn't really had anything to do with my dad either, I thought, and they'd had another baby then, my little younger brother, Nick. Because I was a bit lost, and I still remembered a lot of the stuff that had happened to me when I was a kid and the things I'd seen, but hadn't done any therapy or anything. I was a bit confused. I was pretty angry. And then when I saw the fact that like my mum, my stepdad, and my little brother and my sister all had the same last name, and I had different last name, I just really become really angry, and I wanted to push them all away. And that's when I started wagging school and that, to be honest. And so when I went to live with dad, and I was pretty fucked with dad, I was determined not to go back though, because I was sort of real proud, like I'm never going to come back, you know what I mean? And I got to the point where I was behaving pretty badly when I went to live with my dad, where more or less my mum and my stepdad had said you're starting to become a bit uncontrollable anyway. So I was just determined not to go back there, mate. That was a big difference. Was no boundaries, no structure, no dinner on the table at 5 o'clock or anything like that. It was just, and you fend for yourself, mate.
Yeah. No, it's an interesting, way where everyone thinks it's that dad would be more strict.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and then, I understand that too of coming from structure than not having it.
Yeah.
And sometimes that structure is knowing what time you're going to get dinner.
Absolutely, man. And I look back now, brother, and I think to myself, at the time I just thought it was normal.
Yeah.
And then I'd go to other kids' houses and they'd have a hot feed on the table and their parents, can you swear on this podcast?
Yeah.
Yeah. Their parents aren't calling them fucking dogs and cunts and motherfuckers. And I'm
Yeah.
thinking, actually, maybe my house wasn't normal, but there is moments I look back and I think it was, like, I think it's funny now, but but it wasn't safe or normal. Like I remember my dad coming home one day and he there's a mum has a bike. He's never with a club. He's just he's got mates in 5-6 different clubs. So he's always off riding bike, stuff like that. Someone's having a run, he'll go with them. Different clubs having a run, he'll go with them. That sort of thing. And I come home one day and I remember there was a torn off back of an envelope on the table, and it said, "Gone on a run to Adelaide back in a week," and it had $5 paper clipped to it. And so, it's just not normal. That's just not how you raise kids, and that's funny. But I remember being pulled out, and I get along really well with my old man now. Like we're we've got a different relationship. We're mates. We speak once every fortnight or whatever. But I still remember other things too, man. I remember being pulled out of bed by my old man to go and fight people at 13, 14 years of age, men. Remember my old man one time very vividly giving me an empty Jim Beam bottle, or Smalley, and saying if this good fella that my old man was going to fight, if he starts getting over me, but either come with a bottle, and if you don't hit him with it, it's be worse for you when we get home, So there was funny things like the envelope and that. I guess it's funny, but there was other stuff. It was really unsafe, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, really dangerous.
Yeah.
But it just fed all the violence I'd seen growing up. I had this period of about 6 years living with, or 7 years living with my mum and stepdad, when my stepdad wasn't violent. Like, he'd belt us if we were naughty, for sure.
Yeah.
But I was never fearful. I was scared to get smack,
Yeah.
but I wasn't terrified like my mum's first partner. He was just really firm, my stepdad. So I had that period of time where things were safe, but all that stuff from childhood, and then when I was with my dad, this idea that violence being around all the time, I just became really normal, man. I just thought that was normal, and that's how everyone lived their life. Everyone was just violent.
Yeah.
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 And it was a social norm.
Social norm.
Yeah.
Yeah, because all my dad's mates were violent as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was not one of them that would come over and, talk about punching on and things like that, and there wasn't one of them that would go, "Oh, no, that's not the right way to do it, mate." If I get in a fight at school or whatever, they'd be like, "Oh, that's great, but tell me what happened, If I can kick him and stuff like that," and it was really celebrated.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. And everyone was violent.
Yeah.
And they were all tough cunts too, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I just wanted to be like that.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just a goal.
Nah, 100%. So go on, as you touched on before, started using drugs and stuff at school. Where did you start? What did you start using?
Yeah, so I started smoking pot really early, but then because of the fellas that like my old man was hanging around with and stuff like that, my introduction to the harder drugs was definitely, and it was probably a problem for me for a long time throughout life, was, the really like a hardcore, like bathtub mixed up like bikie, like speed, like the hardcore gas, and I started sniffing that, licking that, putting it in drinks and stuff, and drinking a glass of cordial with it in it by the age of 15, 16, and that would go more recreational, every now and again. I was very lucky, brother. I had grown up because Cole Ken's got about 1,400 people back then. So I was lucky. The beauty of a small town is that one person can often do a lot of different things. So the careers advisor at my high school that I went to, and like I was saying earlier, man, I fucking hated school, but I didn't want to be at home, so I'd never get suspended or anything. The careers advisor at the school, Billy, beautiful bloke, he's been passed away about 12 years now. He was also the careers advisor, school footy coach, but also the town footy coach. So when I was mucking up at school, I was kicked out, or working from the desk in the hallway or whatever, he'd take me into his office, get me the newspaper to read, stuff like that, show me how to talk to me about life, And then he said, "Why don't you come play football? This is AFL, Aussie rules." And I say, "Oh, I don't really want to play, man." And he'd say, no, but listen, mate, I'll get you out of home. And he was mates with me, I mean.
Yeah.
But he'd say, and he'd never sledge him or anything, but he'd say, oh, but mate, give you a break from home 2 nights a weekend on Saturdays. Seemed a pretty good idea, you know what I mean? So I started to do that. So I'd kick the drugs and then there'd be no footy, so I'd start to smoke pot again. And it was a bit of a cycle for a while. And then I ended up moving out from my dad's at about 17. We had heaps of run-ins, and we come to our last run-in where I was actually worried that one of us was going to kill the other one.
Yeah.
Got to the point I was so, fuck it, I'm leaving. I never spoke to my old man again for about 8 years after that.
Yep.
But then I moved in with my grandparents for about 2 years, and they were really, they're both passed on now too, but they were good, really good people, man. And I got off the drink, off the drugs, learned how to concrete, learned you know, about life from my grandpa, learned about love from my grandma. But then a couple of things happened when I was about 19 where they were just triggers for a lot of the stuff that I hadn't dealt with from being a kid. And I knew that I was going to jump back into using that again, and I knew I was probably going to go a bit crazy again. And I didn't want to expose my grandparents to that. So I remember strolling down the hallway at their place one morning. I made my mind up, and I said, so I knew what I was about to do. And I just said to them over breakfast, listen, I'm moving out. I'm shifting away somewhere else. I got some work. And that's that. And it was really abrupt, you know. And I look back now, I probably should have stayed with them. Life would have been a bit better. But I ended up shifting out, man. Straight away started using again. Scully at first, like speed at first. A lot of ecstasy, party drugs. Never smoked pot again after that. I didn't really like it, the slow stuff, eh? Started to use a fair bit of ice as well, but mostly speed and ecstasy. All trying to mask, you know, this legacy of unhealed trauma. Started using steroids really heavily. I call it fancy dress now. It's like, the way I look at it now is like every day was Halloween, mate. And when people that haven't been around that lifestyle, they'll ask, well, what do you mean? I say, all these stupid fucking tattoos, like the big rings, the big chains and stuff like that. I wanted to join a bike club myself, went down that path for a while. And at the time, I thought that was the best, you know. You go into a nightclub, you don't have to pay for drinks and fucking, you know, staunching people, and just, I thought I was invincible, you know. But I was wearing a costume, mate, because I'd get home and I'd just lay in the room on my own, and I can just rock back and forth, because I was this broken version of a man, but I was just trying to be something else. But I thought I didn't know anything else, you know. I had spades of love throughout my life from my grandparents and my stepdad and my mum, but I wanted to be in a position to never be hurt by anyone again. So I started to try and become like a monster, and dress up in fancy dress, you know, and use all these substances I could just to numb all that pain.
Exactly. It's, you know, those primitive years of learning how to be a man from 13 to 18, the men you seen were wackies.
Yeah, that's it. I just wanted to be like them. They always had money, they always had women, they had mad bikes, they had mad cars. I just want to be like that. Yeah.
So then, so that's the image.
That's what I want to be.
Yeah, and that's the mask. It's like, well, that's what a man's meant to look like, so I'm going to go down that pathway.
Yeah, wearing a mask, massive.
Yeah. And it's, you know, it's the also persona of not knowing and life of trauma that I'm going to be a gangster. Yeah. And that image of what we think a gangster is as well. Yeah. And try to portray that.
Mate, you're right, I wanted to portray it, and I look back now and I think, mate, the most gangster thing you can do now, go do a 9 to 5 and feed your kids and be a loving husband. You know?
Yeah. Do a job you don't like, but you're going home.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. Yeah, it's the most gangster thing now, but mate, that went on for about 3 or 4 years, and I started to, offending had gotten worse then, worse and worse, and it got to a point in time where I'd started to become a little bit disillusioned with hanging around with other clubs and other sort of stuff like that, because sort of the same people that were saying, oh, you know, mate, we'll take a bullet for you, we're brothers, rah, rah, rah. When I ended up getting charged with a few different things, I ended up getting left with it on my own and stuff like that, and I'm sure you know the story of that stuff, and sort of thought, didn't have enough foresight to go, I'll walk away from it completely, but I'll pull away from it a little bit, and ended up getting pinched for a pretty serious assault, and was on bail, and I thought, you know, I'd I've done a few silly things on bail because I sort of didn't really care. You know, I hadn't spoken to my stepdad and mum for a long time. I'd alienated everyone. Didn't speak to my dad for a long time. But like I did dumb stuff. Like I turned up to my stepdad's. Can't remember what it was. A significant birthday age, maybe like 45 or 45th or 50th or something. 45th maybe. I turned up there off my head on ice, and you know I was carrying on like an idiot, breached my bail, and you know stupid stuff like that, and I didn't really care until got to a point in time where I thought that there was nothing else to do for me. There was nothing else of value in anyone's life that I could bring, and I thought, you know, I'm going out, I'm using all the time, I'm still working, but I'm just being violent and you know doing. You know, all these shitty things. The only thing that I was connected to still was my grandma. You know, I'd speak to her every Friday night, and because I was running, you know, being a cream, I'd have a different SIM card all the time. She'd still answer, and she'd still say, you know, I want, you know, she'd always ask me, come home, and you know, get better and things like that. And I always say, no, I'm all right, you know, man, I'm not ready yet. And got to a point in time, and I don't know what the trigger was, but I thought, this is it. Like I was, and looking at spending about 10 years in custody for what I've been charged with, and I thought, oh, I'm just no good to anyone. I don't have anything in my life to live for anymore. So I've just got this big empty hole in my heart, except for my nan, and I'm just gonna kill myself.
Yep.
So I figured out this plan, you know, and I thought once I make a decision, I'll stick with it. Like when I moved out from my grandparents, I'll stick with it. So I thought I'll go to work all week because there was people that were relying on me to come to work. I was, can't remember what I was doing, I was labouring, I think. So I had to help out with jobs and things like that. And then come Friday, you know, I'm going to go and get a heap of drugs. I'm going to use all weekend. And got to the point of time then where, like, when they're using at the start was fun. Yeah, partying, you know, partying at nightclubs, things like that. But mate, the back end of my using was in a room at home. I wasn't even going out.
Yeah.
You know,
the isolation part.
Isolation.
Yeah.
You know, and I was living by myself, and you know, I'd have a sniff, and I'd lock the door. I didn't put music on. Like I was fucked. You know what I mean? And you know, so I did that. I said, I'm going to go and get the drugs on Friday, and I'll use all weekend. And when they run out, I'm going to kill myself.
Yep.
So I did that, and I woke up in hospital and in a psych ward, and after about a day and a half, the 2 days, the psychiatrist and all the team were doing their rounds. And I remember, look, mate, I had no life skills. I could concrete, and I could hurt people, and I could hurt myself, and I could probably make a toasted sandwich. That's about all I could do. I thought to myself, but I need help.
Yep.
I'm in hospital, so this is where you get help apparently. And when they come around and tell me I could go, because I'd said I'd been coming under a drug-induced psychosis, and they said, no, well, you're sober now, so you're no longer psychotic. Well, they're out. I remember saying to the psychiatrist, mate, look, I think I need to stay because I've got this like a backstory of 20 odd years of violence behind me, and like I'm in trouble, I'm in and out of court and things like that, and I'm just fucked. Like, can I just stay and get some help? And I remember what he said to me. It stuck with me, man. He was really fucked. He said, you can't stay. Hospital's not the place for people like you. You can't be helped. So people like you belong in jail. Now, at that time, aside from thinking, fuck you, I was thinking, I never thought I'd work in mental health. But even in that moment, a little thing popped into my head where I thought, if I ever am in a position to help people, fuck, I'll never talk to them like that.
Yep.
And so I got out of the hospital, and I remember he gave me a packet of sertraline tablets, and I chucked them in the bin, no explanation of what they were for or anything. I went out and got back on, and this shit kept going for another 6 months. And then I remember giving my grandma a call on one of them Friday nights. I'd ring her every Friday night. There was something different in the way she spoke that time. She said, come back home and get better. And so I went back home and back to her and stayed there for a while and started to get better and feel better. And rang up Mick Barrister one day, and I said to him, mate, how can we get this moving along a bit quicker? And I've been going through court now for like 2 years, and he said, well, first thing he said was, you actually sound really good. And I said, I don't have any drugs on board now for over 3 months. I said, I'm in breach of my bail again though, because I'm not residing where I'm supposed to. I'm down at my grandma's. And he goes, that's all right, that's fine. And I started to fill him in on a few things. I said, look, I've walked away from this outfit I'm hanging around with. I'm, you know, I'm fucking trying to make a change now. And he said, well, it was funny. He goes, probably the first thing you do, make it speed up a bit, mate, is stop pleading not guilty because you're on CCTV. The assault's on CCTV. And And I said, alrighty. He goes, are you willing to plead guilty? And I said, yeah. See if you can get a deal or something. And he goes, I see if you look after me. And he goes, well, you've lost the 25% because you've been pleading not guilty for 2 years now. But I'll see what I can do. He went true to his word. He rang back about half an hour later and he spoke to the DPP. They'll get rid of charges A, B, C, and D. If you plead to A and B on this side, instead of 10, you're going to do time. They probably do 2. And I said, first time in years, man, my head was clear. And I thought, it's okay. I've got something to live for now. So I didn't want to go to jail. I was scared to go to jail. I was terrified. When people would ask me when I was on bail and that, say, you're going to do a whack, are you scared? And I go, no, I wouldn't care. I was terrified, man. I was really scared to go to jail. Especially when I walked away from the organisations I was hanging around with, because I thought I'm going to be one out in here. Am I going to have to do these things again to get an identity? And I just didn't want to. And I was scared, man.
Yeah.
Anyway, I still had a fair bit of time to go, so I started to do a few little things and started to coach a few kids in boxing and things like that. And I was really determined for the magistrate not to know about that, because I didn't want that to be like get out of jail free card. Anyway, I started hanging around with a few boys in Wagga, mates, saving grace. When I look at it now, we were doing stuff with the youth there, and we had an organisation called the Black Suns, and we're doing youth work, all volunteer. And I probably shouldn't have been doing it because I was in trouble and things like that. But anyway, they brought me in, the boys, they looked after me, some really good brothers, good men. And funnily enough, someone nominated us for an award, and we got a photo on the front cover of the phone book.
Yep.
So I'm going up for sentence, and I'm good. I'm doing good. I've got a partner who's pregnant with our oldest son. Things are going pretty good, but I haven't been used for a long time. I stand up for sentence, and the magistrate says to me, mate, this is the first time you've come in here and you haven't been fucking rolling your eyes, looking around and getting charged with contempt and things like that. And, because I was fucked up, man. I remember having to do a 10-week anger management course as an outcome for an alcohol-fueled offence, violent offence. Yeah. I had to do 10-week anger management. And on the 10th week of that, to celebrate graduating, I went out, got drunk and bashed someone. Like, that's, my mind was fucked up. And I thought that was okay, Yeah. So it was the first time I'd take, and he used that as an example. And the magistrate, and it was the first time I'd taken things seriously. And he ended up finding out about coaching the kids, and he said, that's really good, I'm glad you're doing that. And he said, well, then he started in on the spiel, which I had to hear again about, society needs to be protected from people like you and all that sort of stuff. And for the first time, I wasn't thinking, no, shut up, fuck up, can't, you know what I mean? I just want to get to the pub. I was listening to him, and at the end of it, he goes, so I'm going to sentence you 2 years today. You didn't end up getting sentenced to 2 years. And then he said, but there's one other thing. He goes, when I sit down and make coffee in the morning, drink my coffee before I come to this very bench, I open up my phone book and I see your face on there, and I'm reminded that people can change, because I've been seeing you for a long time now. I'm reminded that people can change. So he goes, I'm prepared to wholly suspend that sentence and give you a second chance. But he said, if you come back before me, he said, mate, I'll throw the book at you. Like, you will not, you will. And I'm like, see, he called it a second chance. It was probably my 102nd chance, you know what I mean? I was very, very lucky. And for me, still coming from the old school too, I was, even in my mind, I was still in that mindset at the time. My first thing was, people are going to think I give them up or I snitched on someone or something because I got off or whatever. And I think, well, I haven't done anything. I've just stuck to my word, and I've become a better man. Yeah. Or become a man. Yeah. I wasn't a man before. Yeah. And man, that was in 2005 or 2000. The offence was 03, sentence in 05, 06 maybe. Yeah. Yep. So 20 years ago. It was the first time in my life, man, now at 43. So I committed that offence in 2003, so 23 years ago. It was the first time in my life now that I've got more time under my belt, non-violent than violent. Wow. 22 years non-violent, 21 years violent. Yeah.
Congratulations, brother.
Thank you, brother. Yeah, I think about that sometimes in a quiet moment, eh?
Yeah. Yeah. It's a good thing, bro, It's those little accomplishments within self, like yourself, and like each to their own. A lot of people put their sobriety stuff up. Yeah. But some people are like, no, I just like to keep that to myself. That's just for me to reflect on. Yeah, I think about that every now and again. I do reflect on it. Yeah. Share it with people, important people like yourself. But yeah, it's a bumpy road. And
the healing wasn't. People used to share the story with them. They go, so then you just got better. And I say, no, it took a while because it's not straightforward.
I seen this thing yesterday or the day before. I think I'd seen it before, but yesterday it resonated for me. It was a glass of wine, and the person puts it under a running water tap, and how long it takes for just pure water in there, and it's translucent again from water.
Yeah.
The water ran for a minute and a half, 2 minutes.
Yeah.
And you just like, and the quote was like, healing doesn't just happen.
Doesn't just happen, mate.
Yeah.
It takes a lot of drops of healing to dilute the poison.
Yeah.
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 I was poisoned.
Yeah.
Never had a chance as a kid, as all my childhood was taken away as a toddler, and then a lot of adolescence as well. So, yeah, it takes a lot of drops of purity to reverse a lot of that stuff. That's a good one. I like that.
Yeah. And it's a big thing I say to a lot of people, and I'm sure you say the same thing, is like we talk about addiction, it's one day at a time, you got to keep doing the work. Trauma's the same.
Exactly the same.
And it's because new triggers are going to come up 10 years later that you weren't even aware of. You're going to, why did that song make me feel this way?
Yeah.
It's like, well, you got to continue doing that work.
Absolutely. You smell something, hear a song, see something, a certain colour, it's the way somebody walks, and it can take you back to that moment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what was I guess, after all that, and the next step for you, you touched on that your missus was pregnant.
Yeah, so we had a little boy, then we separated, and then when he was 5, when he was getting ready to go to school, I thought to myself, initially I was directed through the family court, which is probably a story from another podcast, but to do a program called Parenting After Separation, where they said you had to do, everyone who was in the program going through family court had to do, I think it was 6 counselling sessions, and you had to do group ones and stuff, but individual ones. And so I went to a big service in Wollongong, counselling service, asked for a counsellor, and they said, what? Because I knew I had to heal that trauma stuff too. And my son was at a pretty pivotal age then. He was about to go to school, and I thought, nothing, I haven't offended or used or anything the last 5 years, but I just wanted to still get better, you know, and I hadn't had any therapy, and I'd still in my head was the psychiatrist telling me I belonged in jail, and so I went into this service where I had to do counselling for family court, but they said, what sort of counsellor do you want to say? I didn't know that they meant things like narrative therapy or CBT or whatever. Funnily enough, mate, I honestly thought they meant, do you want to look like a man, a woman, whatever, and I said to them, I'd like to see an Aboriginal male counsellor because, growing up not connected to culture at all, that's why I searched it out in the bikies and things like that, or wanted to go down that path and things because I wanted to belong to something. And as I started to learn more and more about culture, that was one of the things that prompted me to ask, I should say, in the counselling. So I want an Aboriginal male counsellor because I want someone who's like me and they'll probably understand me. And anyway, about a week went by and I thought, I haven't heard from them. I don't want to get in trouble by the family court. So I went back down there and I said, I come in a week ago, blah, blah, blah. And they said, look, mate, we've looked through all our databases online, everything. Because this was a while ago now, probably 15 years ago, they had Skype and stuff. And they're like, we can't even find someone for you to Skype to in New South Wales. And the lady goes, there's no Aboriginal male counsellors in all of New South Wales. They just don't exist. So I'd been working with kids and stuff. Then I was doing some work in the court, attorney generals and stuff like that, liaison work. But I was considering going back to concrete and labour, and then because being a single dad, it was expensive, you know what I mean? We had a 3-bedroom house, my oldest son and I had one room kitted out as like a gym, and I was doing pad work with fighters and stuff in there while he's asleep, make ends meet, you know? And I thought, I'm going to go back on the tools, and then when they said that to me, I thought, I hated school, but maybe I need to study and be a counsellor because I wonder how many other men have gone there and just given up when they were told that. So anyway, that's another story, but they ended up saying, we've got a man you can see. So I thought, right, I'll go and see this bloke then. I thought only a man would probably understand what I'm talking about. which is funnily enough because some of the best therapists I've seen now are women. But
Yeah.
but at that time I wanted to settle. I thought I could only go and see a man because there was things I wanted to talk about too, about using violence in my relationships and that too. And I thought, a woman, female counsellor, psychologist will just think I'm a piece of shit, you know.
Yep.
So I'll go and see a man. So when they sent me down to see this man, and I thought, this will be all right then. So I'll go and see him and get in there, mate. And he goes to me, pretty standard counselling question. He says, tell me why you're here. And I started to have all these thoughts in my head, and I thought about the fact that if I don't get better, you know, like really better, my son may go through the same things that I went through, or I might relapse and I'll expose him to shit and things like that. And I started to think about, I've just met my partner, who's now my wife now, been together, married 14 years. Now, I just met her at the time, and I thought, you know, she deserves a chance at a good, you know, stable husband, regulated husband or partner. My son deserves a good regulated dad. I started to speak to my dad again. I was connected to all my family again. But my overwhelming thought was that I'm here because I need to heal from these wounds from the past. I don't want my son to have to go through them. And I started to cry. And it was the first time I could ever remember crying, because when I was a kid, crying wasn't safe at our place, you know. My mum and I were never allowed to cry with her partner. And, you know, rather than say, you're okay, or do you need tissue or whatever, and man, look, I know working as a counsellor now, you've got to reach sometimes to build a rapport. You ask people about the weather, the footy, or whatever. So now I think maybe he was trying to build a rapport with me, this bloke, but, you know, it was anything but, because what he said was, he goes, oh, you crying? He goes, fuck. He's giggling, he goes, fuck. I've never seen a bloke with heaps of tats cry before. And I just felt like I felt like an idiot, man. I felt tiny, so vulnerable.
Wow.
I felt raw, like my chest had just been ripped open and everything was on show. And I started to go back into that mindset of like, oh, when I've been in this position before and I've been vulnerable, what have I done? I've lashed out. I've hurt people, so they're the vulnerable one. So I just like this, I got up out of the chair and I thought, I can feel this bloke. And just in that mind, my mind's eyes was my son as well. But then as I'm not a tough guy at all. But when I went over to get him, he went like that. And I remember, man, it flashed into my brain of me as a little toddler going like that too. And I was getting the fuck bashed out of me. And I thought, I've got to already been 5 years. It can't be like that anymore. So I got my stuff and left and went back down to the family court and told them about it. And they were really good. And they said, just, mate, if you can find someone else. And I was at the gym that night training the bloke. He'd just come out of the nick. And he had to see a psychologist as part of his parole. And he said something really, really resonated with me. He goes, go and see this guy, man, because he understands men like us. So I rang this guy and I thought, I only need to see this bloke 6 times for the family court and I should be okay, you know. Ended up seeing him for about 3.5 years. Then he moved on and I was doing okay for a while. But over the last 10 years, man, I've continued to go in and out of different forms of therapy. Went and saw a psychiatrist a couple of years ago, got diagnosed with attachment disorder, PTSD and ADHD, which made me understand why school was so fucked, made me understand why I sabotaged so many relationships, but also what one of the psychologists said to me and the psychiatrist reinforced it was, you know, this idea that what happened to you when you're a child and the trauma that you carry, you know, it's not your fault. So this idea that trauma isn't your fault, you know, but the idea that, you know, what you did to other people as a result of that trauma, that is your fault. And the psychiatrist would reinforce that back to me and say, this is why healing is so important and this is why the work's so important. I'll give you those tablets for your ADHD, not a problem. And I'll help you out, which they do. But you have to do the work, man. You've still got to do the work. And, mate, it was a combination of a few different things. It was starting to share my story, which I never thought I would do. And it was a lady, beautiful lady. She works for, I won't name the uni, but she works at a uni here in Sydney. And I'd known her for a long time. And she was lecturing in the social work department. And, you know, she said to me one day, you got to come in and share your story because I've got these social work students and they're fucking heaps sheltered. They don't know about the real world. And she said, you need to come in and talk to them about what you needed from a social worker when you were growing up, but you never got it, and how your life might have been different if you had someone that cared about you. And I thought, it's actually probably worthwhile. So I did that and I started telling the story more and more therapy and found a few different things, brother. Found breath work, and that was a massive thing for me because it was something I could do all the time if I needed to. And, you know, so that was a huge find. And that biggest thing for me they made in terms of healing was been with my wife 15 years, married for 14. Man, she didn't know fuck all about my life, my past, nothing for the first 10 years of our relationship.
Yeah.
And I gradually tiny let her in a little bit, and then about 2 or 3 years ago I did this piece of work with the ABC where they did a story about my life and trauma and that. It was hard for Kate, man, my wife, because I was really ashamed of the things I'd done to other people and ashamed of the things that I'd let happen to me when I was a kid. You know, when I say let happen, you're a defenseless little toddler, but I still held a lot of shame over that, and I didn't know how she could love someone like that. Not to blame her, and that's a lot of why I kept it from Kate, you know, and it was hard, man, because when we did that, I did that bit of work with the ABC, you know, it's hard for her because she said, I'm really proud of you for sharing your story on TV, but why does the rest of Australia get to find this stuff out that you have never told me, you know? And that was a big moment in our relationship, man. Now, 2-3 years on from that, you know, she said, because you don't trust me. I said, no, it's because I was ashamed of myself. And, you know, I'd share everything with her. Now that was hard too, though, because kids at my kids' school watch that, and they'd say to my kids, you know, particularly my daughter who's 12, she was 10 at the time, she'd come home and said, Dad, the kids at school said you killed someone or you almost killed someone. The kids at school said you did this, and I had to have the conversations with her that I probably wasn't ready to have, because the kids, they only know me as the cheerleading dad and Oztag dad, you know, not the other person. But if anything, brother, it was good because it shows them that people can change as well. Yeah. But for me, the biggest thing with the work is I tell my wife everything now, man. Yeah.
And that's, you know, that shame it holds and dictates, and I don't know if I've ever said this to you before, said on the podcast a couple of times, but the way I use shame is when I'm doing work with people who have been sexually assaulted as kids or mob, because mob shame's been put on us, is I use shame. So we know sorry is an action word. We don't believe in somebody it's just says sorry all the time and start to show the actions. The way I use shame is it's a controlling word. Once shame is thrown upon us, because we don't go find it, once it's thrown upon us, we then are dictated to what's happening for us. So when something's perpetrated against us, well, the perpetrator says, well, it's your fault, it's on you. You go tell somebody this has happened, it's on you. Colonisation made us ashamed of who we are as people and stuff like that. To where now, because that controls us so much and it holds us so much, that if you look at it in the bigger picture, corporations use it to their advantage as well. You go into Woolworths, if you're having a shit day and you're down in your shame, you're too scared to get the black and gold chocolate. You go buy the expensive chocolate and take it up there, because what they're going to think of you if you go there with the cheap chocolate.
Can't afford the Cadbury's.
Yeah. So for me, shame is that once it's thrown upon us, it controls us.
Yeah, it's like
it's a controlling cloak.
Yeah. Can't get rid of it.
Yeah. Trying to look for a way out of it, but it holds us.
It holds us, deeply.
Yeah.
You know, I'm lucky, man. I've got an incredible wife. She's so loving, and she's rock solid with the work I do now. Like I just got back. I'm really lucky, man. I was very fortunate to be able to do this work, and just got back from 2 weeks working away doing men's work around TV, working with other men who have been violent their whole lives for most of that time away, but I don't want to be violent anymore, but nothing been shown anything different, you know, and she understands, you know, the kids understand, and, you know, fortunately we're getting to a point now in our house where, you know, people ask, why do you do the work? It's the work that you do is because I've always wanted to get to a point of time where in our family you could sit around the table and talk about shame, and you got all your kids sitting around the table. We've got 4 kids, and you can ask one of them, have you got your boots for training? Did you do your maths homework? Did you take your medication today for whether it's anxiety, depression, whatever it might be? And listen, man, you forgot to put the bin out tonight. You got to put the bin out. And that none of them things are fucking weird. Like it's just a normal combo. You know. So and I talk to, I know, not graphic about it, but when the kids ask me why I'm going away, so we're going to be away for 2 weeks. Now, what are you doing? I tell them, I said, I'm helping people that don't know how to love. Don't know how to talk about their feelings, and you know what I mean. And I could easily just say, "Oh, I've just got to go to work," but I want the kids to know it's normal.
And that's it. And it's those things when you're out there doing that, it's making it normalised of helping people do that, but also normalising the conversations of that people sometimes don't do okay.
Of course.
And it's, you know, it's those things that we don't. I had a bit of a rant the other day about being accountable to our own thoughts, but also being accountable to what we say.
Yeah.
It's because sometimes we'll say things and think, oh, I just didn't really think about what I said. Well, the accountability comes on what you say.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it was taught, when I'd done it was around the stuff with Kane Evans coming out as a gay man, and I was like, well, there's all these off the hand comments that, you know, things that you just touched on a little bit there around crying, not being allowed to cry as a child. Other things that people say, don't, if you're crying, you're a girl, you're a sissy, you're a budgie, it is, toughen up. So we say those little things and we're saying, but I don't care if you're gay. But everything you've just said to your own child's telling me that it's not okay to be gay.
100%.
Yeah.
Don't cry. That didn't hurt.
Yeah.
You know,
or give you something to cry about.
Give you something to cry about. You know, hear that one all the time. And we normalise. We're so comfortable with normalising the bad stuff, violence, drinking, drug use. Grew up where those homes were normalised, but we're uncomfortable around normalising love, crying, vulnerability. We should be comfortable with that, and that's why. And you raising your child the same. Getting to the point of time where that's normal in the house, telling you love each other. It's normal. You know, I've had a bad day with my mental health today. That's normal. That's just as normal as asking the other kid, "Where's your boots for training?"
No, exactly right. And making those normal conversations.
Normal conversations, because hopefully, you know, we're starting them young. Like our youngest fella's 6, and hopefully he's starting that young that he gets to the point where he's 10 or 12 and he's like, oh, actually, I am struggling a bit with something, or might be. He knows he can come and talk to us because we've been talking about it all the time. It's just part of this is normal as the weather.
Exactly. Exactly right. Having those normal conversations.
Yeah.
And that's something I say when working with our men, you know, is men's business wasn't just about being initiated. It was accountability to each other.
Of course.
It was saying to each other, I'm not feeling okay at the moment, what can I be doing? What can you do for me? It wasn't just about going out for different forms of initiation and hunting.
Well, you know, that's right. You know, you go out with 3 other blokes in that format and you think, we're all going to do 25% of the work, but if I can't do 25% today, I'm going to do 5%. The other boys got to do 35% each, and you're sharing, you're responsible. That's what being a man's about, being accountable to each other as well. Yeah. Not just that one process, as important as that is, there was so much more to it. And when we talk about all the other layers of that, that's what translates to our kids now. Yeah. There's so much more to being a man.
Yeah, there is.
Yeah.
There is. And there's also a sensitive side to that as well.
It is, man. Yeah. There has to be. And, you know, it's funny because, you know, I've got a good relationship with my dad now. Like, we're mates, you know, and you know, I need him as a mate now. I don't need him as a dad now. But the healing work that I've done, it's funny because even in the conversations that I have with my dad now, and I'll tell him, he'll say, what did you do when you went away for 2 weeks? And I'll tell him, we did this circle, and we did all those things. And, you know, there'd be times gone by where he would have said, oh, that's, you know, fucking girls sitting around crying and stuff like that, or, you know, oh, do you fucking really talk about that or whatever? That's stupid, you know? And it's almost like me doing healing work is kind of drip feeding back upstream to him, because he's really, like, he hasn't sat down on the mat and done a breath work yet, you know? That's my goal with him, but he's really curious, man. He'll ask stuff, and I say, oh yeah, and then so that bloke's telling you about that, and what advice did you give him, and then what happens then, and you know, it's changing, you know what I mean?
It's funny you say that. You know, breath work is something you're doing, you want to get your dad to do with you. I want to get my dad on my podcast.
It'd be great for him, man.
You know, but it's that thing's like, I'm not fucking doing that.
I'm ready to talk about that. I'll talk about it without a camera though.
No, 100%. And you know, those little things that you touch on, same when I go do my work, my dad's like, well, what do you do there? And how's that work? And I had the privilege of inviting him to a space when we were doing up in Burke, and it was just a dinner, but we were sitting around the circle. And my old man was travelling at the time, and he goes, "I'll come through and see you." I go, "Well, we've got this dinner on tonight." We're sitting around the circle. I go, "But come out." And he was just like, for him, it was like, because we double stole and stuff, to be a part of that space was like foreign for him, because there was no alcohol. So Jenny was, when he was around that stuff, there's all having the drink around the fire or something like that. So it was a different feeling for him as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's powerful, man.
Yeah.
That's really beautiful.
Yeah.
What a privilege to be able to share that work with you, Dad.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah, that's nice, you know. And to see his relationship with like my son, it's beautiful to watch as well.
Oh, man. Yeah, my old man is a really good granddad.
Yeah.
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 And it's a hard adjustment, mate, because when at the beginning I'd see him on the floor playing with the kids and that, and you know, and like you might only see him once a year, but if I'm home and I'm talking to him at home, not in the car or whatever, I'll say, "You want to talk to the kids?" And he'll say, "Yeah," and they might only talk for 2-3 seconds, ask him about footy or school and that, but like he'll send them $50 for Christmas and stuff like that, and I was thinking to myself, "Oh, how come you couldn't be like that to me?" But then, you know, my wife lost her dad young, my stepdad's gone. So if I was to still be in that mindset and think, "Oh, yeah, you fucking never told me you love me," my kids get no granddad.
Yeah.
You know, and like I said, me and my dad get along good now, mate. We've got a relationship, we talk every couple of weeks, and it's good, yeah. But he's a good pop. Yeah.
No,
It's not a second chance. And I think with your dad as well, man, what I think is it relieves the pressure on them.
Yeah.
They don't have to be a dad. They can do that stuff and then go home.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the grandkids need them in a different way to how their sons used to need them, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that's it.
Yeah.
So, final question, my brother. When it's all said and done, and you're in the dream time, what do you want to be remembered for?
I want to be... It's a hard question. You said this to me at the start, you want to ask this. So all through this, I've been thinking about it in the back of my mind. I want to be remembered as someone who didn't let my mistakes define what life would look like for my family, but as someone that use those mistakes to help other people. It's a bit long-winded, this, to help other people, but in a way where my family are proud of me. Yeah, I want my kids and my wife to think, if I was to pass away this afternoon, I'd want my kids and my wife to think, you know, he was really proud of the work that he did to help other people. Yeah.
Thanks, brother.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, man.
No, all good, brother.
Yeah.